Previously in this video series, we've told you about the top 5 drivers that the Ferrari, Williams and McLaren teams have had in a sort of statistical ranking looking for the drivers who have achieved the most success for these different teams. And yes, I know we've let this mini-series gather dust, but it's time to take it out of the freezer and tell you about another 5 drivers who have made history with a team that, on this occasion, returned to Formula 1 in 2010. But they did it with the firm intention of returning to the top and achieving success after success. In what has been, up to this moment, a dominant run through the top category of motorsport. Ladies and gentlemen, we've already talked to you about Ferrari, Williams and McLaren. And now it's time to talk about the German team, whose origins in Formula 1 date back to the 1950s, but their strongest history begins from the year 2010. Being a team that arrived after buying the Braun Grand Prix structure and that in just 16 years has achieved 8 Constructors' Championships. Now it's time to get to know the 5 best drivers in the history of the Mercedes team, the German structure that in this 2026 is dominating and crushing the competition, but through which a select group of drivers has passed, in a structure that knows how to dominate and win in the big circus. But before we start with this top list, as always, a small clarification. Since we remind you that this ranking will be based mainly on statistical data, it's not an appreciation-based ranking like in the previous videos. And we will follow a hierarchical order where the titles obtained will matter, then the victories, the podiums, the number of races the driver competed in, and so on and so forth. So I repeat again, this is a ranking based on statistical data and not on appreciation of who is a better or worse driver based on their talent. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the top 5 best drivers in the history of the Mercedes Formula 1 team. To start with this video, we need to make a small clarification again. Seeing how dominant Mercedes is in 2026, it's very likely that by the end of the season, both the 4th and 5th positions will change drastically. But with the data we have up to this point before the Miami Grand Prix, it puts the 5th place in this ranking. It's a British driver, trained within the Mercedes Academy, who is currently the leader of the Silver Arrows team. Ladies and gentlemen, from Kingsland, United Kingdom, George Russell takes 5th place in this ranking. Although, as I told you, this could change greatly by the end of the season, since seeing Mercedes' dominance in 2026, it wouldn't be surprising if Russell ends up moving up to 4th place if he gets more victories or even the World Drivers' Championship title. The story of the young British driver with the Mercedes team dates back to 2017 when a young Russell, just 18 years old, was signed by the German team to join their Young Talent Academy. Story of the young British driver, the team, with which he trained from 2019 until 2021. And it was in 2022 when Mercedes decided to bet on his talent and promote him to the main team after he had great performances with Grubb's team, and thanks to the excellent performance he had in the race where he replaced Lewis Hamilton in the Sakir competition in 2020. Unfortunately for Russell, between 2022 and 2020, and in the team didn't have a car as competitive as the one from Mercedes' golden era from 2014 to 2021, since starting with the W13 Mercedes had a car that was difficult to drive, complex, and whose pace was far from giving them the tools to fight for world titles. In the ground effect era, even so, in those 4 years in which he was able to compete full-time with Mercedes, he not only managed to achieve 5 victories, but was even able to beat his teammate, 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton, twice in the drivers' standings in 2020. And in these years that he has been with the Mercedes team, he has been known for being a very consistent driver with a lot of reliability and more than fulfilling his role. It's not for nothing that he has the nickname Mr. Consistency, and in 2026 finally, after such a long wait, it seems that he finally has a weapon to fight for a world title. With a dominant and completely lethal Mercedes, with which the young Brit started 2026 with a victory at the Australian Grand Prix. And this is exactly the reason why I told you. This position could change significantly by the end of 2026, as winning the title would statistically place him among the top 4 drivers in Mercedes history. But at least for now he has to settle for that 5th place, although I'm very sure that sooner or later he will climb up as one of the best drivers Mercedes has ever had. But in the end, the numbers that credit Joe Russell as the 5th best driver in the history of the Mercedes team, statistically speaking, are the following. 2 fourth places in the drivers' standings in the year 2020, 2022 and 2025, 6 victories so far in 5 seasons with the German team, and 26 podiums achieved in 96 races competed with the Silver Arrows team. Numbers that establish Joe Russell as the 5th best driver in the history of the Mercedes team, and I repeat, he will very likely finish the year moving up at least one more spot. With the 4th place in this ranking, a very strange situation could happen at the end of 2026, since it could be the case that he drops a spot in the standings or even disappears from the top 5 best drivers in the team's history if a series of results combine. But at least for now, this spot is held by a driver who was with the team from 2017 to 2021 his finish, and his name is Valtteri Bottas. A large part of the Finnish driver's career has been spent defending the colors of the German brand. Why? Because in 2017, after the unexpected retirement of Nico Rosberg, Formula One in 2016, where the team principal, Toto Wolff, besides being his manager, saw him as a potential candidate to replace the one who had won the Drivers' World Championship title in 2016. And after a tough negotiation with the Williams team, he became part of the Silver Arrows team for the 2017 season, quickly finding himself in the golden era of the German team, which allowed him to achieve his first Formula One victory very quickly at the Russian Grand Prix that season. But he also practically found himself facing his teammate Lewis Hamilton's prime, where the Briton was completely dominant, and where very quickly Bottas was relegated to the role of being the wingman for the man who at that time was a 3-time Formula One world champion. Well, during his first 2 years, while Hamilton was fighting Sebastian Vettel for the crown, Bottas was simply dedicated to following orders, trying to benefit the team and his teammate. In his first year, he finished 3rd, the Drivers' Championship, and in 2018 he had his worst season with the German team, managing to finish only 5th in the drivers' standings, even behind people from the Ferrari team and the Red Bull team, which unfortunately ended up sealing his position as simply being the wingman for the Mercedes team. Even so, the guy didn't waste his opportunities and managed to achieve several important victories during his time with the Silver Arrows, earning along the way 2 world runner-up titles in 2019 and 2020, which, statistically speaking, allow him, at least for now, to hold this 4th position in the ranking. His last race with the German team was at the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, because even though Bottas was a reliable driver in many ways, Mercedes aimed to move young talent George Russell up to the main team. And after 5 seasons with the Mercedes team, the management believed it was time to replace him and give way to their young British prospect. But in those 5 seasons, the numbers he managed to achieve were enough to earn him this 4th place, which are basically the following: 2 World Championship runner-up titles in 2019 and 2020 and 5 Constructors' Championships from 2017 to 2021. 10 total victories in 5 seasons and 57 podiums in 101 races competed, defending the colors of the German brand. With these numbers, Valtteri Bottas holds the 4th spot in this ranking of the best drivers in the history of the Mercedes team. Whether his time in this top is long or short, his legacy will last for a long time, having contributed greatly to the history and successes of the German team. In 3rd place on this list, we finally have a driver who was able to win a world championship with the Silver Arrows. In the team's history, only 3 drivers have managed to become world champions, and the holder of the bronze is the only German world champion they have ever had. The Mercedes team, who earned his medal by engaging in a fierce battle against his teammate and whose name is Nico Rosberg. Nico Rosberg is a driver who joined the German team in 2010, basically in the first season of the German team's return to Formula One. He was signed with the intention of leading the restructuring and arrival of the German team and to lay the foundations for what would later become a successful and world champion structure. During his first 3 years, he had 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher as his teammate, and since 2010, he emerged as the team leader by being the driver who achieved the best results and finished higher in the drivers' standings. In fact, the first victory for the German team after their return was achieved by Nico Rosberg at the 2012 Chinese Grand Prix. However, starting in 2013, his teammate would be the one who would eventually become his greatest rival in the top category, the Briton Lewis Hamilton, with whom he became involved in one of the most legendary rivalries we've seen in the top category. And after a transitional year in 2013, the hybrid era began in 2014, bringing with it the dominance of the German team, which ruled the category with an iron fist, especially in those first 3 years. He was adapting to this new power unit regulation, and from 2014 he began his fierce personal battle against Hamilton, where he started his fight for the driver's title, although he was defeated in 2014 and 2015. And it wasn't until 2016 that, after a long and difficult season, he managed to achieve the greatest prize in motorsport, becoming world champion after finally being able to defeat his teammate. Nico Rosberg in 2016 managed to achieve the dream he had pursued practically his whole life, and after achieving it, he decided to put an end to his career as a driver. Not only as a Formula 1 driver, but as a driver in general, since he left the tracks after achieving that milestone he had been chasing for so long. And obviously, that world title puts him in that select group of drivers who have managed to become world champions with the German team, in which only 2 other drivers are above him. But the numbers that credit Nico Rosberg as the bronze of this top and the 3rd best driver in Mercedes history are the following. 1 World Drivers' title won in 2016, 3 Constructors' titles in 2014, 2015 and 2016-23 victories achieved, and 56 podiums in 133 races contested under the colors of the Mercedes team. Numbers that credit Nico Rosberg not only as a member of the select group of world champions of the Silver Arrows, but also as the bronze and the 3rd best driver in the history of the Mercedes team. 2 We're talking about the Mercedes Formula 1 team. Many people tend to overlook that this organization didn't arrive in Formula 1 in 2010, but actually has a history. In the first decade of the birth of the top category of motorsport, more specifically in the years 1954 and 1955, but just like in recent times, no matter how brief their history was, when they arrived, they came to win. And it is at this particular point in history where we find the silver of this top and the 2nd best driver, statistically speaking, in the history of. The driver in question appeared in the top 5 of the best drivers of the Ferrari team and makes another appearance in this top, the Argentine Juan Manuel Fangio. El Chueco, the Master, or Juan Manuel Fangio, by 1954 had already won the World Drivers' Championship at least once, in 1951 with the Alfa Romeo team. However, despite not having participated in the 1952 season in 1953, he returned to Formula 1 to race with the official Maserati team. He would race with the same team again in 1954 at least for the first 2 races of the season. This does not include the Indianapolis 500, but for the 4th race of that championship, he left the Maserati team to join the official Mercedes team in Formula 1, where Fangio was already involved in the fight for the title, and even by the middle of that season, he decided to take a risk and switch teams. At a time when it was much easier to change teams between seasons or even during the same season. But despite the change, the Argentine never slowed down. He kept up the pace, and in the next 6 races, he managed to achieve 4 victories and a podium, which allowed him to win his 2nd driver's title in the category and his 1st with the German team, in a feat that, you could say, was shared between Maserati and Mercedes. And thanks to this success and the good relationship he had with the people at the German brand, he stayed there for 1955 to win the crown again, but this time as a full-time driver for Mercedes. However, for the German brand, 1955 would be a very difficult year, as it was the year of the terrible accident at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, where one of their cars was involved in a crash in which even spectators ended up losing their lives. And that led the board to make the decision to withdraw from motor racing at the end of 1955. In fact, in that Le Mans race, Fangio was participating and the accident happened right in front of him and almost cost him his life. But despite this and the withdrawal of the German team, plus the tense political situation in motor racing as a result of this horrible accident, it didn't stop the Argentine from winning the World Drivers' Championship, his 3rd, but now driving full-time with the Mercedes team. When the season ended, Mercedes kept its word and withdrew from racing, forcing Juan Manuel to find a spot with another team, continuing his story in Formula 1 but now with the Ferrari team with which he would compete in 1956. But those 2 seasons, or a season and a half to be more precise, were enough for Fangio to write his name in gold letters in the history books of the Mercedes-Benz team. He was the only champion in that first era that the German brand had in Formula 1, achieving 2 World Drivers' titles before his retirement, and the numbers that credit Fangio as the 2nd best driver statistically speaking for the Mercedes team are as follows. 2 World Drivers' titles obtained in 1954 and 1955, 8 total victories for the German brand, 7 pole positions and 10 podiums in 12 races in which Fangio raced for the Mercedes team. Thanks to these achievements, the Argentine rightfully takes 2nd place in this ranking of the best drivers. Statistically speaking, of the German Formula 1 team, the first place in this ranking is something many of you already know, since we're talking about the driver who joined the team in 2013 and stayed with them until 2024. And during those 11 years dressed in silver and black, he was responsible for crushing and pulverizing records one after another. Ladies and gentlemen, the gold of this list and the best driver statistically speaking for the Mercedes team is British, and his name is Lewis Hamilton, who, before joining the German team, had already arrived in Formula 1. In the year 2007, competing with the McLaren team, with which, from his very first year, he got involved in a fight for the title. And in his second season as a Formula 1 driver, he became world champion in 2008. McLaren already had ties with Mercedes back then because before they became an independent team, the folks from Woking and Mercedes were partners, and so the Germans were well aware of the talent the British driver had, and in 2012 they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Not only did they offer him a lucrative contract financially speaking, but they also promised him that sooner or later he would. In 2012, Hamilton made the decision to leave a world champion team that generally always gave you the tools to at least fight for victories, for a team that up until 2013 had only won one race and was more of a midfield team. A gamble that brought him a lot of criticism since he was leaving the team that gave him a world title for a structure that had shown practically nothing since its arrival in 2010. What was obviously a gamble, but in the end, time proved Lewis right. Because in 2013 alone, he got his first victory with the German team at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and in 2014 he not only had a winning car, but a dominant car, with which, after getting involved in a fierce battle against his teammate, Nico Rosberg, he achieved his second World Drivers' title and his first with Mercedes after the checkered flag fell at the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. However, things wouldn't end there for Hamilton as he continued to achieve success, becoming world champion in 2015, 2017, 2018, 2019 and 2020, managing to collect 7 world titles. He has 6 titles with the German team and also competed for the championship in 2021. But he ended up losing in the last race of the year, at the Abu Dhabi circuit, the chance to become an 8-time world champion, at least up to that moment. After this bitter experience, Hamilton stayed with the German team to continue being their driver during the ground effect era, but this time Mercedes lost all its winning and dominant ability, and this ground effect era, for the German team, extremely tough, far from regularly fighting for victories, and even further from competing for world titles in years dominated by Red Bull and McLaren, which led Hamilton, after the year 2024, to decide to bet on a new project and leave the Silver Arrows team, to join Ferrari, the team that is now his current home. And that's why he left the team that gave him so much success for so many years in a row. But regardless of Hamilton's last years with the Mercedes team Mercedes, it can't be denied that this has been one of the most successful relationships seen in the history of Formula 1, full of records, victories, championships, and absolute glory for both the German team and the British driver, becoming one of the most iconic duos in the history of Formula 1, where even though Hamilton now competes for the Ferrari team, his name is written in gold letters on the highest step in the history of the Mercedes team as their best driver statistically speaking, and the numbers that support this are the following. 6 World Drivers' Championships won from 2014 to 2027, Constructors' Championships from 2014 to 2021, 2 World Championships in 2016 and 2021, 81 wins and 143 podiums in 225 races representing the Mercedes brand. Absolutely incredible numbers that prove that Lewis Hamilton is, statistically speaking, the best driver in the history of the Mercedes team. And obviously the top spot in particular. But ladies and gentlemen, with that we finished the top 5 of the best drivers in the history of the Mercedes Formula 1 team. But here's what I ask you. In terms of talent, how would you rank the list? Would you leave it just as it is? Would you change anything in particular? And let us know if you'd like us to do this exercise with other teams like Alpine, Red Bull, or historic teams from the Formula 1 grid. Let me know all your opinions in the comments section. With nothing more to add, I'll say goodbye by telling you that if you like this video, give us a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so you know when I'm uploading a new video, and share this with your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter using the links in the video description, and stay tuned for more content here on Skyline Racing. Thank you for tuning in and see you later.